Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. So, last time, if you're kind of going through Moodle and you're watching these videos in order, last time we did an overview of Unity and we kind of left off at this point. What we're going to look at this time is we're going to take a look at projects, at scenes, and what these things are, what they're not, and basically how we can get comfortable with the Unity game engine. This is probably one this is probably one of the most important things to really understand about Unity. And you get the idea of projects and scenes. It makes a whole lot of the rest of working with Unity a lot more comfortable because you are understanding how Unity stores its project information, how you can manipulate it. So at the moment, this is our project we have, right? We've got our scene view, we've got our project panel, we have our scene editor. Notice we have the star right up here at the top. That means that we've not saved this scene yet. So I'm going to go ahead and save this scene and do a file, save scene as, and it's wanting to save this scene in a folder called assets inside a folder called example project. Remember back when we created our new project, we called our new project example project. And when we created that, Unity created a folder called example project. So a project within Unity is the same thing as the folder within Windows. So a project is not a single file. It is all the files in the project. That's why down here in the project pane you can see there's multiple things. There's not just one file. There's multiple parts to a project. But a scene, on the other hand, is one file. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to call this my first scene. So that's what I'll call this scene. And notice it shows up down here in my project pane. Now let's take a look over here. We have our example project on my desktop, which is where I created it. If I double click that and go inside my example project, let's see. So I go inside my example project here, and oops, it's on my other screen. And here I have an assets folder, library, project settings, temp, and this Microsoft Visual Studio solution. Basically, all of these right here, we don't care about. They're vital to the project, but we as a user, we don't do anything with any of these things. Where we work is in this assets folder. So notice in this assets folder, now I've got my properties for my folder to show hidden things. So most likely if you're following along, you do not see this .meta, .meta, and .meta because they're generally hidden. I have my properties set so that I can see all hidden files and folders within Windows Explorer here. So notice we have the assets, we have my first scene, we have a new material, and we have some unnamed PNG file. Alright, well let's go back into Unity. Notice in our project we have my first scene, new material, and some unnamed PNG file. It's a texture, but PNG is a graphic image. So you can see these are the three things here, and you can see those three things exist over here in this folder assets inside the example project folder. So let's say I want to change this unnamed right here. So I'm going to select it and press F2 so I can change its name, and I'm going to call this star map. Oh, my caps are on. I'm going to call this star map. Okay. Now let's go back over here. Notice over here that PNG file is now called star map. So what we've got here, the assets folder inside our project folder is an exact duplicate of our project pane right here. I'll take this a step further. Inside my example folder here, I'm going to do a Control-Shift-N. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this folder images. And I'm going to take this star.map and I'm going to move it over here to images. Alright, let's go back to Unity. So notice when I press Unity, it's processing something. What it's doing is it's processing these folder changes. Notice in the background here, you see the star meta file, it disappeared. And it's in here now. And these meta files, we don't It doesn't really matter what they are. But if I come back here into my project pane, notice my first scene, new material, there's a folder called images, and inside that folder is star map. So you can see how this project pane is this folder. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Oh, come on. There we go. It's this folder right here. Okay, so that's an important thing to note right there. Is how is the the similarity between those two. Okay, next up, I'm going to go ahead and close Unity out for just a second. And once I do that, I'm going to close that folder as well. This example project right here, I'm going to rename this. So I'm going to press F2 and I'm going to call this first project. Okay, now I'm going to reopen Unity, and Unity is going to come up here in just a second. And notice in my list of projects I can open here, I do not have example project because I've changed the name. I changed it to first project. So in order to open something that's not in this list, I go to open, and right here, this is a big thing to notice. See how this says folder? I'm not looking for a scene. I'm not looking for a file. This trips people up. This is one of the biggest things to get very early on because we are so used to opening a file. That's not what we're doing. We're opening a folder. So what folder contains my project? It is this first project. I don't have to double click it and go into asset. I don't have to do that. I select the folder. First project has it. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to select that folder, and it will then open up here in just a second. And we are almost there. And here we are. Notice it's right back to where we were. This is what it looked like when we were working with it. So you can see how this is the same kind of thing. Let's see. I'm going to do another thing here. I'm going to select this material right here. And for that albedo right there, which is a texture, and it's okay if you're looking at this and you're like, I don't know what these textures are. I don't know what you're doing. This is just an example. In programming class, we're not going to do a whole lot with the materials at all. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this star map and I'm going to drag it up there. So now it's part of this material here. Right? There it is. Kind of goofy looking, but that's fine. And I want to now go ahead and close Unity. Okay? Because here's what I want to kind of demonstrate with this. Let me bring up where my first project. There it is. If I go into the assets, I have this scene file right here. This scene file is 18 kilobytes. Now remember, in that scene, we have a material that's 5 kilobytes that uses this image for the texture, okay? And that image, that star map, is 459 kilobytes. What we can tell right away is that this file, my first scene, it does not contain that texture. Okay, it doesn't have it. All this is, basically, you can think of this as a list of what things are in the scene and where they are. Actually, not even where they are. It's just a list of what things are in the scene and where they are. Yeah, I lied about that part. So this is just a list of what things are in the scene, and that's it. So if I were to take this folder out of here, this image, it will not be able to load this. I'll get an error. So to demonstrate this, I'm just going to go ahead and pull that folder out of there, reload Unity. Notice this time my first project is here, so I'm going to hit this. And notice our material. It has defaulted, where is it? Here it is. It's defaulted back to this because that texture is gone. So if you were to, and this is a common thing, when you're submitting an assignment or you're emailing me an assignment because you have a question, if you send me this scene, I don't get this folder, for instance, because it wasn't there. Let's close Unity again. Close Unity out. one more time. Come on, Unity, close. This time I'm going to take the material out of this folder and reopen Unity. There it is. And I'm going to open first project again. This time it's pink. Whenever you're in Unity and you get this pink color, this is a shader error. This is meaning that there's something wrong with the material or the shader of this particular game object. If I select that game object, notice you can take a look here. There's no material here. In my mesh renderer component, if I open up the materials, it says this material is missing. And sure is, it's not in the project. The scene and the project, they're not the same thing. A scene simply is a list of all the project stuff that is in the scene. It does not store the project stuff. So if we're going to close Unity again, and this time we're going to say, well, you know what, I'm just going to copy all of this back in here, okay? And then I'm going to, so now everything should be fine. So let's go ahead and reload Unity, and everything should now be fixed. And let's see what happens. It's not fixed. Because once this scene was opened in a project that didn't have it, it all basically, see, this material is fine, but this scene, once it tried to load in a project that did not have all this project stuff, notice this material, which one is it, you? There it is still missing. So that means if you send me just a scene file, and this happens a lot, I cannot reconstruct your project. It's not a case of, oh, well, just drop it in the example one. It's like, no, that's not how this works. This is the scene. A scene is not the project. It is just a level. And it does not contain all the stuff in the level. It contains a list of what is in the level, but not the things themselves. So how do you send a project to somebody? Well, there's a couple ways. But the way that we're going to look at the moment is we are just going to, this is my project folder, I'm just going to select it, right click, go to send to compressed folder, and I now have a compressed folder that contains my project, right? So I can take a look at that stuff, and then if I want to send this to somebody, I can just send this zipped file. Now we can also export our project. We'll take a look at doing that in class specifically, but for right now, we'll just be aware of being able to zip up our project. So if you are sending me your project, or you are submitting your project, you submit the folder. Now you can tell you have the right folder because you will have this icon right here. Let me delete this real quick. And I'm going to right click, and I'm going to do let's extract all, and I'm going to extract it to a folder called first project right there. Okay. See this folder icon? That is not the same as, I'm going to change this name. I'm going to call this correct project. I'm going to do a Control C, copy that up here. Alright, so here you go. You can see the difference. Okay, see that little icon like that? That is the Visual Studio icon. Goes to that one right there. So if you've installed with Visual Studio, as was recommended in the last video, you can tell you have the correct folder when you see that icon. If you see this icon, it means you have a folder inside this folder, which is not the project. This folder is not the project folder. This one is. Okay, let me try to clarify that just a little bit here. I'm going to move this over this way. Let's bring up Unity again. And notice I don't have a project to open because it is buried inside here, right? So I'm going to go open first project. See, I can't open it. That's not where it is. I'll click inside there, correct project. There it is. So the project folder is the one that has that icon. If you don't have that icon, it's not the project folder. All right, that should be a pretty, that's kind of an introduction to project scenes, folders. Uh, I can't stress enough that that is one of the main areas that people new to Unity, that's one of the biggest struggles right there, is understanding what those are and kind of being afraid to do anything with the project folder because I don't know what's in there. So if you have any questions about all that, just send me an email. Just ask your questions so that we can hopefully get you on the right track.